Welcome back to the Crypto Clown World podcast. I'm your host, Jason Bruce, the host with the honks, here with Mr. Christopher Lundy, our resident OPSEC expert. You there, Chris?
I am, loud and clear. How am I coming through?
Fantastic, sir. Good to have you. Happy St.
Thanks,
Patty's
Mr.
Day.
St. Patty's Day, the day of rivers colored green and Irish people everywhere in Ireland wondering what's wrong with us Americans.
Sure and big Oren.
I've been to Ireland twice, and
I hope you didn't
I
kiss the
remember
Blarney Stone.
actually, I did kiss the Blarney Stone in 2000. Actually, in January of 2000, I went to Blarney Castle.
Oh, me grandma had the misfortune of kissing the Blarney Stone. You know what they do to the Blarney Stone, don't you?
Yeah, purportedly people go up there and literally, I don't know. But,
Supposedly the locals might get a little too intoxicated, right? And then they go up there and they'll relieve themselves on the Blarney Stone. There's a wee joke to the tourists.
They specifically state that if you haven't had any alcohol, you can't go up there because of risk of death. Because it's not in their insurance cover, but that was 24 years ago. But it's a lovely surround. When I got up to the ramparts, the stone is actually on the ramparts, and the drop from the top of the castle, that where the Blarney Stone is, it was kissed as the thought was that it has magical powers and that it blesses anyone that kisses the stone. Irish are very superstitious people in that era, but yeah, that's what they did. Warriors before battle, they would kiss the Blarney Stone, and apparently it worked. But it was a beautiful surround, lovely old stately homes. There were bonsai trees everywhere.
Really?
And that Irish green grass that is impossible to describe how much greener it is than here in the United States. But it was a very memorable experience because I can definitively say that I kissed the Blarney Stone when I was a very young man. So.
Oh yeah, I guess that was a while ago now. I get so screwed up with the timeline these days, man. It's like people talk about 2000. It's like, oh yeah, 2000. Oh shit, that was 24 years ago now.
Yeah.
It's pretty wild. Pretty wild. But yeah, here we are, March 17th, 2024. So this is our second official episode of the Crypto Clown World podcast. Bitcoin's been really, really volatile the last few days, and a lot of people have gotten bucked out of the market. From what I've been seeing and hearing, most of the leverage has been shaken out. So there is a chance we have some room to move back up here, but I'm not sold on the fact that we're actually like solidified on solid ground yet. So we would really have to like lock in a new high in order for me to think that there's going to be another leg up. So we'll have to see how that goes. Like right now, technically at this level, which is like just above 68K, if we close the week here in about 5 hours at that level, to me that should keep us bullish, but we still have some hurdles, and there's some things that have me questioning things in terms of where we're actually going with the Bitcoin price. So obviously alts took a pounding along with that. Some of them are bouncing back pretty good today. With that in mind, I know there's been some pretty interesting things going on the past week or so that we're going to have Chris highlight here. So what are you seeing on your end before we jump too far into our technical analysis?
Well, I just wanted to speak to your Bitcoin comments briefly. It's not surprising that the price is going down to me because it hit an all-time high and then it hit 3 all-time highs in a week. If you're not taking profits, you're doing yourself a disservice. So that being the case, even I don't see large dumps coming in because there's too many on-ramps coming online. But I'll speak to that in the geopolitics shortly. But my first salvo of the day, breaking news. This was published today on the Daily Hodl. JP Morgan Chase going to be paying a $348,200,000 penalty. And this penalty was issued by the Federal Reserve and the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency in the United States. And they specifically mention unsafe or unsound banking practices. Here's the leader. So both the Fed and the OCC stated that JP Morgan engaged in, quote, unsafe or unsound banking practices, close quote, in relation to its trade surveilling program. So what is a trade surveilling program? Well, a trade surveilling program is something that detects fraud. And what the OCC found was that since 2019, the last 5 years, JP Morgan operated with gaps in its trade surveillance program, meaning they deliberately turned it off, and led to the failure of JPMC to monitor their traders and to monitor their clients for market misconduct. So, not this is going to stop JP Morgan from misconduct. The problem with JP Morgan Chase is that the biggest bank in America, they can basically do whatever they want. I mean, Jamie Dimon just sold 150 million, so 348 million is chump change for that. This is all too common with these slaps on the wrist. There was actually a point during the financial crisis, the last one in post 2008, where the Federal Reserve was considering preventing Wells Fargo from engaging in banking because of all of the scams that they were running. So there are quite a bit of headlines I want to go over. So let's get started, shall we? As for Nigeria, Jason, I spoke to Nigeria last week. So, and I mentioned that they applied to join BRICS. Well, there's more fun problems with them in relation to Binance. So, one of the executives of Binance, his name is Tigran Gambaryan. He's a former U.S. federal agent, and he's one of 2 Binance execs that are being held without charges by Nigerian authorities. So my thesis on a shakedown was very much correct. And recent media reports have suggested that Nigerian officials have requested Binance to disclose the identities and transaction histories of its top 100 users. And I'm not talking about the top 100 users in Nigeria, but the top 100 users, period. So they're definitely taking orders from somebody, but at the same time, applying to join BRICS, these 2 things speak to a tug of war in the Nigerian upper echelons of their intelligentsia and political establishment. Something else to note is that there's going to be a lot of headlines here in regards to banks, so get ready. So there was a major stock market crash. Well, not 1929 level, but there was a huge drawdown in the Indian stock market on March the 13th. And Mark Spitznagel, also known as the, quote, Black Swan, close quote, fund manager, says he expects the stock market to rally further before we, quote, hit the worst crash since 1929, close quote. And this was published in the Times of India on the stock market crash and in Business Insider. So now Mark Spitznagel has quite a track record, and part of the leader in the article, he states that markets are alive, but they move to get people positioned wrongly. We are instinctually herding animals. These are his words. We are instinctually herding animals, and we are momentum-based. And when the market moves one way, we think it's going to happen forever. So he's referring to the fear and greed index. He is basically saying that there is malinvestment in the markets. And when I say the markets, this is specific to the stock market. And this also dovetails with another recent interview that was done on Kitka News by Michelle McCory. I believe she interviewed Gareth Soloway. And he actually agrees with my call of a 50% correction in the S&P 500 and believes that it is imminent. Moving on. The London Stock Exchange has this week started accepting coin exchange traded note applications and ETNs. So what is an ETN? Well, in the UK, an ETN is a debt security. it provides exposure to the underlying asset. So it's essentially the same thing as an ETF. Instead of the name notes, it's fund or funds. So essentially, it's the same thing as an ETF. So now, as part of the emission guidance, it has to be physically backed, i.e., non-leverage, which means that it's not going to be a leverage ETF. It's going to be a spot ETF. So it's encouraging to see that these ETFs are spot and not leverage, because leverage is how they shake you out of the market. But we shall see what happens there. And just in today, Vladimir Putin of Russia has, according to exit polls, as of right now, has won re-election in Russia with a vote tally of approximately 88% of the vote. Some are reporting 86 or 89%. So I'll just settle on 88 for now.
Quite popular, that Putin. Quite popular.
Yeah, something else paired together with that. There was a press release, I believe, by the U.S. State Department that it was last week. They put out something early last week stating that to stay out of warnings to U.S. citizens to stay out of public for the following 48 hours. And what happened in the following 48 hours? Well, there were Ukrainian troops that were attempting to invade Russia on its Belgorod Oblast borders and in areas as far north as its NATO contact line close to Finland. So this was definitely a very closely coordinated attack, and it's still ongoing with huge waves of drones over the Belgorod Oblast right now, which is in western Russia, along the border with northeastern Ukraine. So expect to see more of those. Something else about the Gaza port that I spoke to last week that the United States is building. That port is under the surveillance by the IDF. So the IDF is providing fire cover for it. And I expect this port to come under attack because it is not a humanitarian port. I was thinking that perhaps there was an effort, frustration, but we have to understand that, the United States and Israel are partners in this war. And the United States State Department has publicly stated that, Joe Biden, the President of the United States, has publicly stated that a loss for Israel is a loss for the United States. So they're fully committed to this catastrophe that is being created there. This port, I suspect, is going to be used as a mechanism to forcibly ethnically cleanse Gaza by sea rather than by land. I think that if there is an effort to push Palestinians in Gaza into the Sinai, if that happens, it's going to be very difficult for Israel to prevent very serious, shall we say, repercussions there. But I expect that port to come under attack. I expect at some point, once the escalation towards Lebanon happens, the gloves are going to come off, and it's not going to be, kid gloves anymore. And I think that there have been attempts to avoid direct confrontation, but there's also escalation in the Horn of Africa, specifically in the Gulf of Oman, off the coast of Yemen. The Yemeni government has publicly stated that they will target any Israeli ships attempting to route around the Cape of Good Hope. And that basically means that they're going to up the ante in terms of locking out trade from Israeli ports. And they may extend that to all U.S. vessels crossing the Cape of Good Hope. So it's very important, ladies and gentlemen, to start growing your food, start taking care of operational security in this context, because we've seen all of the predictive programming about the food shortages, and that was done that for a reason. It wasn't done to entertain us. So just be conscientious of that. Speaking of Africa, Niger and the Sahel has ended all of their military agreements with the United States. And they have asked, quote unquote, told the United States to leave the Sahel. So all this cozying up to Russia is giving North African states and states that historically have been very poor economically as well as geopolitically, the ability to assert themselves against the U.S. empire directly. And there are, as we speak, efforts by military in Yemen to escalate. And I would expect to see escalation, significant escalation, before the end of the month. Also, with Human Rights Watch, back to the issues in Levant, they urge the international community to impose sanctions on Israel for its failure to comply with the ICJ's order to take provisional measures in Gaza to prevent genocide. They made a statement on Twitter/X, Elon Musk's platform. The organization stated that, quote, countries should impose targeted sanctions and an arms embargo on Israel to comply with the relevant order issued by the International Court of Justice in January, close quote. And they also pointed out that Tel Aviv has not complied with the court's orders and has failed to deliver aid and basic services. Now, Human Rights Watch has a bizarre track record here because they tend, in my opinion, to not really go as hard as they should with certain types of geopolitical issues. But at the end of the day, these are NGOs, they're think tanks. They don't really have any power other than the soft power influence that they may or may not have. But that being the case, let's focus on a couple things in the crypto space and the financial space. Two very important stories in the crypto and financial space. The first and most important story in the crypto is going to be about Craig Wright. And that case has concluded, ladies and gentlemen. Craig Wright is not Satoshi Nakamoto.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's not Satoshi Nakamoto, guys. So you can stop with the virtue signaling now. And about Bitcoin SV, hopefully this puts that to rest.
One of the guys in my Discord is going to be really sad about that.
The court found the following 5 findings. 1, Dr. Wright is not the author of the Bitcoin white paper. 2, he is not the person who adopted or operated under the pseudonym Satoshi Nakamoto from 2008 to 2011. Actually, there's 4 findings, excuse me. Third is Dr. Wright is not the person who created Bitcoin. And 4th, he is not the author of the initial versions of the Bitcoin software. So, what does this mean for Bitcoin? Well, I opined that if Craig Wright was legit, then this would be good for Bitcoin, but he's clearly not legit. But even if he was legit, that's neither here nor there. I think the most important thing to remember here is that Bitcoin is a compromised project. It is run by the Bilderberg Group, and ironically, even though it has been compromised, it's difficult to compromise the protocol because of its hash rate. So there's something else I want to mention about finance is that the CEO of Vanguard stated that Bitcoin doesn't belong in portfolios. Remember what I said about BlackRock and having such a high stake for the top 5 Bitcoin mining companies, and then they come out with those types of talking points. And you see that type of doublespeak from members of the same club. It's directed towards Russia, not you, because of Russia BRICS's agenda to pair coin with energy settlement. So, and this ultimately benefits the United States, but the problem is that they're accustomed to having it benefit them with their currency rather than something that is able to be utilized in a non-custodial way by any party that wishes to. And we've got some serious deposit flight, ladies and gentlemen. Remember, a deposit is not yours. It's a loan to the bank. It's uncollateralized debt. So if you think your deposits are yours, think again. So we got $4.16 billion, roughly speaking, in deposit flight hitting New York right now. The Federal Reserve stated that there will be more lenders collapsing. And yeah, this is bad, ladies and gentlemen. Like, I don't know what to say here, but the bank in question is NYCB, New York Community Bank, and their new earnings report showed that total deposits fell from $81.3 billion at the end of January 2024 to $77.2 billion on March 6th, which is a drop of $4.16 billion in less than 3 months.
Take a look at the stock price there. Are you able to see our screen share this week, or?
I'm not. No.
Let me see here.
But no. But yeah, you can feel free to look at that stock price and comment on it. if you want to, Jason, I'll let you jump in on that. What's the stock price doing right now? Where's it
Let
at?
me know if you can see that shared out, Chris,
I can.
because
I can. I can see it now.
the last 3 months, the price tanked. It directly got rejected at the 200 weekly moving average, and it fell from $10.50 all the way down to $1.73, and is currently sitting just below $4. So somebody knew what was coming with that earnings call and dumped their bags. So
Yes, they did. And it was more than just one person. It was probably a majority holder. So, and that deposit data comes as power warns that more bank failures are on the way. So, be prepared to see bank stocks down to slightly to the right over the course of the next month or two.
yeah, and I was looking at JP Morgan before I bounced over to this one, and that thing's sitting at an all-time high, and it's about to top out at the top of the channel that it's in the next month or two. So maybe we're going to see something go down where, we'll see some of the big players even take a significant hit in terms of their stock price, and we'll see a shakeout in the market here going into the end of the spring like we usually do. It's setting up for sell in May and walk away right now. We'll have to continue to take a look.
Yeah, and that's setting up in crypto, several projects too, but we'll see how that plays out.
Yes, sir.
Also, big political news domestically in the United States. Big political news domestically. The Supreme Court just unanimously ruled that public officials can be sued in their personal capacity for blocking users on social media. And stated that official posts are part of their job, and blocking constituents from commenting violates the First Amendment. And yeah,
that's going to go both ways for both parties, man. I know that there's been people on both sides that have had some interesting blocks.
Yeah. Jackson Hinkle, who's a very well-known commentator, has his own show. He sent a message to Representative Cohen, REP Cohen is the username on Twitter, to either lawyer up or unblock me expletive. Yeah. Yeah, so...
now, here's the other thing, though, with something like that. I feel like it's ex post facto, right? So if you've already blocked somebody, I don't think technically they can go back and say, you have to unblock them on social media. You can't tell somebody what to do with their social media account in that capacity. But if there's a law that you put in place
for public
going
officials.
forward,
public officials
right?
are governmental the public officials are government agents. Okay, they are public servants. They can't if they block you on social media, it's the same thing as them, locking the Capitol building and preventing you from going in there to redress grievances, which is a constitutional right.
I gotcha.
Right? So they're violating your constitutional rights, but the United States government violates people's constitutional rights with impunity, and most of the time, unfortunately. So hopefully this is a move in the right direction domestically. Also, Jason, I'm going to forward you something I'd like you to read later. It is a post that I saw on a geopolitics and OSINT group.
Okay.
And it was written by a think tank called the American Institute for Economic Research, and the title of the document is called "Childless China: Coercive Population Plan Implodes." And in this document, this particular think tank, their findings show that China, by 2100, due to its one-child policy that lasted under Deng Xiaoping from 1979 to 2016, the Chinese realized how disastrous of a policy this was multiple times and made multiple exceptions to the policy. And people in China were doing ridiculous things. If they had female children, they would dress them up as boys in an effort to, make sure that they weren't killed or kidnapped or trafficked by the state. And now they're facing, by 2100, a 60% decline in population. So that raises a significant number of questions as to the viability of China if they're going to lose this kind population, that's a massive brain drain, and they've been investing in infrastructure, pretty significant. This is not good for them. So all of these economic efforts by China, Belt and Road Initiative, soft power, I think that they are an effort to it's hard for me to state what China's real intents are, in my opinion. But if their um, statements towards what's happening in the Levant are any indication, it seems like they're having a mea culpa moment and realize that they trusted the wrong people, but that remains to be seen.
What if, let me just play devil's advocate here. What if
Hmm.
they were so cunning in their design of this that they knew what it was going to do and that it was actually part of the world depopulation agenda? They just did it from
Well,
within in a more subtle way.
what can I say? Psychopaths have this tendency to think that they can do no wrong
Right.
until they do, and then they don't have a plan because they just think that their plans are set in stone and nothing's going to go wrong. And if something goes wrong, they can just hit the easy button on their AI app. Yeah, but that's not the case. That's not the case. And whenever you have these types of policies to reduce population by that magnitude, you're not going to get the population back for probably 1,000 years um, with that kind of a decline. Uh, Russia is actually right now implementing financial incentives, as is China, for people to have children. So that's an interesting change. And this is in this policy paper. So it's important to separate the talking points of WEF psychopaths from real policy research and real uh, scholarly documentation, because that is when you'll separate the propaganda from the reality. Not all NGOs are willing. Just make sure you find something that's, has a decent degree of integrity and cross references as much as you need to. But after reading that, I'm convinced that it's pretty solidly researched. So, but those are all my talking points for now. So I'll hand it to you if you got questions or speak to anything more detailed.
Yeah, I don't know if I got any significant questions at this point. It's always such a whirlwind, man. There's always so much to cover. I will say, in terms of this, like New York Community Bank Corp, this stock has a decent chance to bounce here the way the monthly's actually looking. So I don't know if they just had like, you know, some type of a capitulatory event there, but you had a pretty deep retrace almost to the 886, and now you've got a bullish divergence forming on the monthly with a shooting star candle. So I would think that this stock would recover from here, and usually it's those type of events where, like you were saying, the big players are front running them, and now they got retail to capitulate on the news, and they'll pump it back up. So um,
Yep.
we'll see how that continues to look, over the next few months, and you could, see something like this where this is just in a very large consolidative type of a triangle, and you'll see it, play out one side or the other. So either the banks will continue to benefit from the inflationary environment and the assets just pretty much going out of control, or we'll see this break down and this stock will go to almost zero if there's like some sort of, intense banking crisis. But um,
I think that this is triage. I think it's being done on purpose. It's a deleveraging play. I was speaking to the deleveraging about the gold ETFs going to Bitcoin ETFs. This is a deleveraging play.
could be.
Because many of these banks were only able to stay afloat by a constant stream of cash from the Fed's overnight lending facilities. And after the Fed uh, basically deep six LIBOR and put in SOFR, they now control interest rates, not the City of London, which is pretty significant, right? Throughout the entire Federal Reserve's existence from 1913 to now, they've never had control over the basic interest rates. London always did. So that means that there's a sea change happening in the financial system in terms of setting the price for money. and we're seeing it play out with these major crashes. That's my take.
I think that's fair. All right. Let's kind of jump into Bitcoin here. And we'll try and get a more firm grasp of where everything's at. So, as we were taking a look at the price action sort of hitting a peak this past week, we were seeing some divergence that was starting to come in that was looking a little bearish. So you can see here there was a little bit of bearish divergence coming in at the top of this formation here. So we had a dip down, a bearish retest, and then we got a really, really hard move down from there. And the bulls were not really able to rally above the 0.236. That pushed the price down further after an initial dip to the 0.5. But interestingly enough, this dip came up short of the golden pocket. And that's what is making me a little bit hesitant right now, because I've seen that type of a move before where we don't get that golden pocket retrace in these types of situations. And sometimes it can turn into a fake out, and then we'll finally get that move down where we'll hit that last, area of liquidity. And really, when we look at it, there's more liquidity down here around the 786. And that actually coincides with another deeper retracement fib if we were to look at that. So if the local structure were to break down, that is an area to look at, and that's like around $62,000. So 64,000 and 62,000 still potentially on the table if we see some rejection out of this current pattern. So we'll keep an eye on that. I really feel we need to flip like at least 72 into support for me to feel really, really bullish, if not create a new high. It's just really, really difficult to see where the momentum is at right now when a trend might potentially be breaking. We've got, in my opinion, what I believe will be a bearish divergence that's about to close on the weekly here. Let's take a look at that. So when we look at this, right, you're like, where's the bearish divergence? It's not here, because obviously we just made a new high on the RSI locally. But what concerns me is the previous top, right, where we had this divergence play out into the downtrend that we had in the last bear market. So this is our last significant high on the RSI. We've made a new high in price action, but we haven't made a new high on the RSI in relation to that. So to me, this is actually a multi-week, multi-year, in fact, potential bearish divergence that might be playing out here. So realistically, with a new high, you would need to see a new high on the RSI, and if that isn't achieved, we could see a pretty bearish move come in. What's kind of throwing me off is the stochastics, because they're still showing that we're pretty strong on the weekly. So if we swing out to the monthly and see what's happening there, well, it really looks like our RSI is just getting started. So are we just consolidating now? You can see in the past when we had this aggressive move up between 2015 to 2017 where we had a blow off top. And keep in mind, everybody was looking for a blow off top in the last rally and we didn't get one. So maybe we see that again. You can see that we had this overbought condition on the monthly. On the monthly, from January of 2016 all the way through to around December of 2017, and then it dipped in January of 2018. So for over a year, we were overbought on the monthly RSI. So if that's going to be the case with this rally, we could say that, potentially this was just testing the base of being overbought there. So let's say it started in like August of 23 or July of 23. We could, easily see that, you know, play out through this summer or later for Bitcoin. So uh, again, history doesn't have to repeat, but it often rhymes. So when we look at kind of how the cycle has played out in the past, we had initially this kind of quick hump and back down on the stochastics. Then the next cycle, we had this extended overbought. And then this last one here sort of peaked our head in that 2019 fake rally. And then again, kind of a quick hump here, right? Almost looks exactly like this one back here in 2013 to top our rally in 21. So do we see something a little more like this time where the stochastics stay overbought for an extended period of time with this rally? That is possible. And you could even take your monthly RSI and connect the dots on there, and you can see that, you know, there was a bearish divergence there on the monthly that played out that caused our last bear market. So the idea being at this point that most likely this RSI would extend up to this line at some point and either face rejection or breakout. If it was rejection, it would, you know, likely lead to the next bear market. So we'll have to see how that plays out. We did get a bit of a double top on the RSI in 2013 and a little less notable one in 2017. We did not get one in 21. So we'll keep an eye on those oscillators as things continue to move forward on the macro. But in terms of the more local price action, we are coming up to some local resistance. We're kind of hitting the 21 MA on the 4 hour. There's a bit of a local point of control there as well. So we do have to be cognizant of the fact that we could face a rejection locally within the next few days going into Monday, Tuesday. I really would expect extreme volatility. You can see just with the Bitcoin dominance, this looks crazy. See all these fluctuations here as we've kind of been testing area above the 200 daily, which has flipped above the 200 weekly now, which should be, you know, short-term bullish for the Bitcoin dominance, which I'm still looking for potentially this target area 58 to 60% before we see Bitcoin likely, you know, make whatever type of a capitulatory move it's going to make in terms of the local rally, and then we'll see altcoins start to make their moves. So if that were to happen, you know, maybe April or May, if this is going to play out, this could be like a little bit of an ugly inverse head and shoulders that's forming here. This is a really goofy looking pattern. I don't even really know what to call it at this point other than it's just a really, really loose head and shoulders. But that dominance can still make a play up. If there's any type of a breakdown, let's see here. So this is a slightly higher high here recently. But we did make a lower low on the RSI, so maybe some bearish divergence coming in there on the daily for dominance. We'll have to keep an eye on that. So there's like maybe even a couple separate drives there, but you can't really connect those two, so that's kind of invalid. So we'll have to continue to keep an eye on that. Hearing some birds in the background there. Chirp, chirp. If we take a look at Ethereum, this actually looks pretty nice when we're kind of zoomed in on the 15-minute candles locally. And I know we had some people capitulate a little bit in the Discord. They did manage to sell like before the last final wave down, but I would encourage anybody, if they did sell yesterday, to maybe cover at least 50% of your position so you're not entirely out of the market right now. We could still see some downside, as I was saying, but this could potentially dig out for ETH. Let's see if the 4 hours looking similar to Bitcoin. There's actually a lot more headroom here on the 4 hour for Ethereum. And if we take a look here, It's actually a really strong hidden bullish divergence, which if you look at BTC, that hidden bullish is present on the 4-hour as well, where we're seeing this significant swing down here at the base of the falling wedge, but a higher swing on the RSI, and now we're seeing this sort of double bottom after the breakdown of the rising wedge, but we're seeing a much lower area on the RSI here on the 4-hour, so that's what's giving us the bounce right now. That bounce is being initiated in Ethereum as well. It's lagging behind Bitcoin just a little bit, so I would expect this price action to move up at least to like the 3690 to 3700 range in the short term. And we'll have to figure some things out for ETH, because if you look here, there was a pretty significant bearish divergence that came in here, where this last peak was up here around the time of this capitulation at the bottom of the range. And then we did not make even like a high into the overbought territory here on the RSI with the last move to the high of the wedge. So that was a pretty significant bearish divergence, and it did force us back down below the 50 level on the RSI, created this sort of a double bottom, and the bullish divergence is actually coming in here right at the end. So I've said this before, when you see hidden bullish divergence into bullish divergence, typically that gives you a stronger swing. So if you look for those are typically areas where you can get a pretty strong long position in and catch a larger move up. So we may see a larger move for Ethereum here, and price discovery would probably be the next step, as that's what we've seen for BTC. So if we're not going to see the rally end prematurely here, this is a little busy. I apologize, I got a lot of levels set up for ETH, but we've blasted through the 786 extension right now, on the macro. So if we take a look at what's going on here, sorry, this stuff gets all condensed when we're moving out to these larger time frames. If we're looking at the smaller stuff, the work gets a little sloppy. So this wicked up directly to the 886 actually. So interestingly enough, I'm gonna just jump over real quick to BNB, and we saw the same thing here. Just wicked above, but pretty much an extension up to the 886. So with Bitcoin making a new high, these other two not quite making a new high, it does make you question a little bit exactly what's going to happen with the market, because is it a condition where Bitcoin is sort of seeing that dominance based on the ETF narrative and the volume that's coming in with that? Is that why the altcoins aren't quite following that, and the fact that the ETF Bitcoin that's being bought, it's not going back into circulation where people in profit are buying altcoins with it? That's just going into BlackRock's coffers, which is really not like the best thing in my opinion. So stuff to think about. And when we see the ETH BTC pair, we're just seeing consolidation still there on the 4-hour. Some very slight bullish divergence coming in there, which may actually pick the pair up a little bit. So we'll have to continue to take a look at that too. Actually, that divergence is a little stronger than I thought, and that's, again, hidden bullish into bullish. So I think we're going to see a strong move come in for Ethereum here, and likely locally the ETH BTC pair has bottomed. Take a look at this retracement here. Yeah, it looks like a nice bottom at the 786. Nice double bottom at the 786 with a bullish divergence for the ETH BTC pair. So not all bad there. I would keep an eye on that, because that's going to lift the rest of the altcoins, right? So if we take a look at Tether, we had a breakout from this sort of a falling wedge, and if we look at the extension on that, that rally came just up to the golden pocket, so rejection there makes sense. There's some bearish divergence there as well. I would like to see this just, make another leg down. So hopefully that's what we'll see here. Like if we see, what actually would end up potentially being a retest of the breakout of this wedge, you could see this, come all the way down here, even at this level, 3.3 to 3.5% for the tether dominance. So that's what we would like to see for any price rallies to continue for BTC and altcoins. Looks like that could happen when we look at the 4 hour. Let's take a look at the daily. The daily's actually lending itself potentially to a larger move here. I would say if you see the dominance move below the 4% level with any sort of, real momentum, then we can look for a larger move up. For right now, this is actually concerning me a little bit. And we may actually have to see the dominance gravitate towards the 200 weekly, which is just above 5%, and the 200 daily, which is just above 6.3%. So just in between that, there's some overhead resistance from a spider line and a 1.618 extension. That's interesting stuff for the tether dominance. So honestly, like looking at all of this, I would expect some pretty significant volatility for like the next 48 hours. The total 3 looks good though. This looks fantastic actually on the 4 hour. We're coming up to a spider line resistance. Had a candle close above the 21 MA, the middle Bollinger Band on the 4 hour. Stochastics look good. Got hidden bullish divergence here. Yeah, that's not all bad. So we'll continue to keep an eye on that. What you wouldn't want to see is like if this came up and made like a double top here, then you would see a much more aggressive move down. So continue to keep an eye on that. Again, for like ETH and BNB, they need to make a new high, right? They need to make a new high above the 886 and make a new all-time high in order to follow Bitcoin. So we'll see if that happens. The total 3 is looking like it may move in that direction. So we did have a request for a few coins in the Discord. Let me just double check. See if there's anything else new. And thanks for joining, Ryan. I appreciate you listening in, man. Okay, so no new requests here since we started the show, but I do have a few coins to go over, so I'm going to jump into AVAX. I don't see that anything significant in terms of the larger targets has changed for AVAX. Okay, so we did sort of fight this level around the 0.5 fib. There was some consolidation, break out of that right now, and the price is now at the golden pocket. So you can say, oh, golden pocket, take profit. Well, if we look at the weekly here, I would not touch my AVAX bag based on the weekly chart. And again, as always, nothing that we say on the show should be construed as financial advice. Get yourself a financial advisor. If you're concerned about such things, do your own due diligence and research before jumping into any coin project, investment, or trade. But with that said, it looks like we've seen the breakout of the consolidation locally for AVAX. As I clean up those fibs there, you had a bit of a channel here. I imagine if I zoom in a little bit, we can get a little better idea of how that looks here. It's maybe almost a falling, broadening wedge. Maybe even like some inverse head and shoulders action was going on in there. Okay, so sometimes you see that where the head and shoulders is a little more complex. You'll see wicks down like that, where we saw here, like kind of a double bottom. And that's obviously just to shake people out of the market. So I would say that you're going to be looking at testing the 706 and the 786 pretty soon. That's, $68 to $86. Just based on where the other larger coins are going, I would continue for this to move up as well. There's no reason why it shouldn't. There's a lot of like meme coin and other smaller coin narratives going on. I know the Trader Joe deck's getting a lot of volume lately. There's a lot of new coins that are popping up on AVAX. So I think it's a pretty strong ecosystem right now. And there's gaming projects being built on there as well. I think Beam and a few others. So no reason not to be holding AVAX right now for higher targets. And really, honestly, I just wouldn't mess with this thing unless you're, looking to dig in and swing your bag, and you'll have to dig in on the smaller time frames and make those decisions. But in terms of the larger picture here, this really looks like it's just getting started on the weekly stochastics, and if that's the case, then you're looking at $150 to $300 here pretty soon if this thing can move into blue sky. So above that, my kind of base case for the upcoming rally is going to be around $780. If it's kind of in between the bear and the base case, maybe 500. But I do think that AVAX has potential to move up into potentially 4-digit territory, possibly $1,300, even $3,600 if we see really, really bullish movements in this upcoming bull market going into next year. So I would just hold on to my AVAX, which is what I'm doing. This is a coin covered by the Crypto Factor a few weeks back. I did throw the signal out in the Discord before it made this initial move up here. It did make a pretty significant retracement back down, almost to my buy zone. So if you were filling up your bags on orange over the last few days, you're probably going to be looking pretty good. We've got a breakout here of that falling wedge and potentially forming somewhat of what might be like an inverse head and shoulders to get that breakout started. And I do see this coin, moving up above $1, and I'm seeing targets around $2 to $4.50. Really, honestly, I don't want to say short term, but like just on the swing, and then we'll have to see how orange reacts to the market. But this is another bag I'm not selling. I think this thing will be pretty good long term going into the bull. So I'm just holding for higher prices. You can see this is really just getting started. There was an initial move up, and now we're in a flag. So I would just expect another move up, another flag out, and potentially another move up, into the real horns of the bear market, or the bull market, excuse me, which would potentially be like $10 or $15 for orange. So do the math on that. I think it's a pretty safe play as far as altcoins go, and I believe that's a BRC20 on the Bitcoin ecosystem. So it's a good one to take a look at. We had a request for Chia. We haven't looked at Chia in a minute. I think we were meaning to do that on the last show, and we didn't get around to it. Chia is layer 1, and potentially they're looking at a IPO. So it's one that you may want to keep an eye on for a little longer term play, or for a mining play, if you're into such things. One of the people in the Discord, shout out to Xavier, I know he's been making good money mining Chia for quite a while. And this thing, good lord, I didn't realize that the high on MEXC was $2,600. So this is sitting just above $40 at the time of this recording. It does look like it's struggling a little bit on the weekly, so it may need to retest the 200 weekly moving average. Well, it looks like we already had the breakout and retested that, but might see it happen again here. There's some bearish divergence on the stochastics, but not on the RSI on the weekly. Let's see if we're holding support on the daily. Daily looks to be holding support, interestingly enough, so I would keep an eye on that. Looks like some hidden bullish divergence. Looking to get more confirmation on the daily as well. Retracement came down to the golden pocket there, so maybe a good spot to enter Chia XCH at just around $40, just above $40 of $41.58 right now. This thing has a lot of headroom, to be honest. You know, if we zoom back out here, you got 50x potential from here, and then if it makes a new high, you know, obviously could do a lot more for you. So not sure I would, you know, load up right now, but might be a spot to start building a bag and see where this goes in the bull run. And it actually looks pretty good here on the chart. It looks like it's established a pretty decent bottom. There was significant bullish divergence that played out here. All right, and then potentially even a little bit of an Adam and Eve that played out here too. It's a little harder to see on the weekly. This was a little bit exaggerated here, but a little bit of Adam and Eve action. So something to consider for Chia. I would look at that as more of a long-term play, but it can pump a little bit. The last pump went from $29 to $59, so almost 100% pump there. Keep an eye out for those pumps if you're trying to scalp or build a bag, but I would buy and hold this for long term, at least like a year, or more than likely really until they IPO. On the news of that IPO, you could probably look to make some profits off of that and dump on the plebes. So that's the story for XCH. We had a request for Peng. I believe this is Penguin. So this is pretty new meme coin to MEXC. I don't remember if this was on Sol or AVAX. I think it was on Sol, but don't quote me on that. But this is like, it's obvious breakout and retest there. And then you're getting like a breakout right now. Thing to consider with this, if you buy this right now, I believe you're going to profit in the short term. When you see that profit, again, not financial advice, but a move potentially might go up to $6.70. You're going to want to take your initial investment out once you get to the point where you've like doubled up. So this thing could easily go to $3. If you're buying this right now around $1.49, it goes to $3. Take your initial investment out, protect yourself, and just let the rest ride. You can decide to sell around $6 or hold for the moon next year for Penguin. All right, Penguin. I'm sure there's a fantastic use case for that one. So I'm going to jump over to Flux. Flux has been looking pretty good here. Had a little bit of an inexplicable rally actually yesterday when everything else was looking horrible. And it broke out of kind of a ugly triangle too. Like, really, these symmetrical type of deals, those wedges don't always have the most bullish action, but there we are with that move for Flux. Keep in mind this is deep in infrastructure play, so I would expect this coin to keep moving up. You've likely hit the short-term target on that, pretty close to what a measured move would have been for this wedge, so might want to consider booking a little profit on Flux, see if it'll come back down. But you know, your daily's closing pretty strong. So you're going to be coming up on some resistance on the RSI, like you're pretty much at it right now. Pretty close to it. So there's going to be resistance on the RSI, potentially form some bearish divergence there on the daily. So just keep an eye on that for Flux. We are a little extended right now, but honestly, you know, this thing still has plenty more headroom. So it came up to the golden pocket there on that recent move. Seeing a little bit of resistance at the top of the golden pocket. So your next area would be like around $1.90. Then you're looking like 250 to 260. And then the higher targets, you know, $3.50, $5, $8, potentially $14 in the bull run for Flux. Should be a pretty decent move for me. I didn't get in at the bottom, but I got in on this consolidation. I think around like 55 cents areas, somewhere in there. So holding some decent profit in Flux right now. I would expect that to continue to move up with deep in narrative, but maybe some short-term consolidation before it makes a larger move. Other coins that have bounced back pretty hard today would be like the AI stuff. So if we take a look at AGIX, which is AGIX, this is connected to the Sophia robot, Singularity Net. So this is in price discovery right now. I think it's fair to say, even though we've seen this type of a rally here, and it's looking really strong, I just feel like there has to be more correction in the market. Like, that's so overextended. But if you look at this thing, here's your daily candle. Go ahead.
Hey Jay, remember that NVIDIA conference is in a couple of days.
Yeah, we do have the NVIDIA conference coming up as well, so maybe we get a blow off top there or something irrational, Like, we've got, again, it's a pretty strong hidden bullish divergence, so that does have to play out short term for AGIX. We've got a bullish engulfing candle printing on the daily. It's just so improbable when you look at this type of a move here. It's just retest at 21, retest at 21. How bullish can this really stay? But here we are. I bought this thing under 30 cents and it's sitting up at around $1.20 right now, so can't really complain.
No, near protocol, they're the only ones that will be at the NVIDIA conference. So
really, yeah, I would probably expect them to continue to stay pretty bullish too. They've made some pretty decent moves. It's outgained Bitcoin over the course of the bull here, so that one's looking pretty good as well. If we flip over to AGI, that's the other big AI project that I'm holding. And this is the smaller of the two, but this is forming like a little bit of a bull flag now. or we're seeing a move back up above the 21 MA on the 4-hour. So there's that same hidden bullish divergence here, right? So that's making a move, but with the breakout of the 21, you might need to see a retest of the 21. So what we might actually see here will be something like that. And I think we may be seeing some setups like this that are potentially forming. So keep an eye on that inverse head and shoulders setup, potentially for other coins. So I have been seeing that a little bit. One other AI coin that I was looking at is this GPT Plus coin, and it did pump pretty decent for me initially, and then it's moved back down. So, you know, as far as what this flag is actually doing here, it's a little bit sketch. So, you know, are we in maybe potentially like a little bit of a Livermore cylinder or something like that? But it does look like this thing might be bouncing off the bottom of this channel. So either that, or we're looking at, you know, possible bearish retest. So you can keep that in mind too. If this was like a rising wedge, may need to come up and retest that. But I've been assured by a group that I'm in that this coin is going to do numbers, and that there's larger money looking at it and buying it and accumulating it. So we had a breakdown of this rising wedge, and that's pretty normal, and the daily's printing a fairly bullish candle right now. So if we look at this as like a cup and handle, this thing's definitely going to make larger moves, and it could even move up to a penny, and it's below a tenth of a penny right now. So something to consider there. It's a smaller cap project. There is more risk that goes along with that. This Prop C is another one that I've been taking a look at. Getting some background noise there. Thanks. All right, so when I take a look at prop chain, this actually hit price discovery, came back down, and it looks like this is like cup and handling right now, like sort of extended type of a cup and handle. So if that's going to be our move, the next target would be above $6 for prop chain. And this is a real world asset coin, so your guess is as good as mine what kind of numbers this thing can do. And you know, just with fib extensions, maybe $8, $16, $25, which, you know, from here that's like 5 or 10x, not that exciting. But you got to keep in mind this is a new coin. The real world asset narrative really hasn't like totally caught fire yet. Even though we have seen some of the coins pump, I think there's still more coming in terms of that, and maybe the bank collapses will be part of that. So there's just a lot of hype around this coin when I listen to people that are, you know, more well versed in smaller projects and that have been doing their research into that stuff. So this thing potentially could make really large moves. Don't let the chart limit what it could do. People are saying it could 100x. I know a lot of people say that in this market, but this thing does have some potential, so I am holding it, and we'll see what happens in the next year to year and a half with that project. So I'm going to wrap it up there with Prop C. I'm going to swing back over to Bitcoin real quick just to see what's happening there. And with our latest 4-hour closure, we are closing above. If we let the VRVP catch up with what it should be doing there, we're above a local point of control. We're above the 21 MA on the 4-hour. So again, we may need to see some short-term consolidation. It may form this inverse head and shoulders, which is very similar to the pattern that I was highlighting on the Ajax chart. If we just zoom out here a little bit and try to clean this stuff up a little bit. I know there's a lot going on with the patterns and the fibs and everything. But if we take a look at this, again, there is a potential for something like this to form. Okay. So keep an eye on that for BTC and the larger market. If we move out of this pattern, maybe take a measured move on that. You know, you're looking at moving into this area that I was talking about before, around that 72, maybe 73,000. So the potential for a double top or, you know, a failure swing is there. And then if we look, you know, potentially could this form like a larger head and shoulders? Possibly. We'll let this play out and see if we can create a neckline. But for right now, price is trying to rally. We're just above 68.5 at the time of this recording. From everything that I've gathered and from the other analysts that I've listened to, this should be a bullish close on the weekly. But I'm still not convinced on this rally, so I'm going to leave it with that. Mr. Lundy, any parting thoughts out of you, sir?
Well, sorry, I had to switch devices because my internet clapped out on my computer. But in terms of projects, one that I haven't looked at in a long time is Pirate Chain. Interested to see what that chart's doing because I noticed that it's seen some gains. I'd be interested to see what the charts look like medium term because it's way down from its all-time high and has plenty of room to run.
Well, keep in mind in crypto markets, liquidity is everything, and sitting on MEXC is not the worst place to be for an altcoin. So right now, I would say it's potentially breakout and retest there. So that looks like a flag, you know. We did get a retrace to the golden pocket, so not all bad there. So yeah, if that's retest, right? You could expect your next target pretty much at the top of the range there, 26 cents area. You know, so above that you could start to work back towards all-time highs. Let me see if we can get a little more price history here.
Well, it only has to clear 26 cents to start to get big moves. I need to see the Bollinger Band here. It's been sitting below $1 for a while.
Yeah, so if you look at the weekly, the upper range of the weekly Bollinger Band, that is actually sitting at 24 cents. So yeah, I would say above that range because you've got some wicks up to that level at 25.9 cents. I would say above that you're gonna see the momentum pick up a little bit. 36 cents would be the next target area. There's a high volume node here around $1.31. In between that, there's a fib at like 64 cents. So you could pick up significant momentum above that. Obviously this thing's been a lot higher and we could project that it might go a lot higher. I think it's probably more realistic to see it maybe rally to like the golden pocket. That would be around $9. From the current level, you're looking at a pretty significant gain. So I think there's still a really good risk to reward ratio. Excuse me. Try to say that 5 times fast if you're Elmer Fudd, but this looks pretty good overall if this double bottom holds. So you need double bottom confirmation. The target on the double bottom confirmation is going to be around 36 cents. And you can see a point of control around that area as well. So that's going to be probably a more significant level of resistance than the 26 level. But above 26, you're at least going to challenge that. So that would be my take on Pirate Chain there.
Helpful.
Any others? Any parting wisdom from you, sir, before we let you depart back into the land of
Well, let's
OPSEC?
take a look. I mean, let's make a look at one more coin. I think that it would be good to look. We've already looked at Flux and did a pretty decent amount of looking at DPIN. But one that I haven't looked at in a while is Uniswap. So I'm interested to see what Uniswap's doing.
Uniswap, the last I saw, the price was consolidating pretty well around like $14. Let's see here. It's just under that right now. It's sitting at about 12 and a half bucks. So it made a pretty good move. And this move, I was waiting forever and ever and a day for this move to happen. So we got the initial move out of the Adam and Eve. I think there's a larger Adam and Eve move that still has to take place. So this consolidation is taking place around the zero point 0.5 fib. You saw a wick up to the golden pocket. Again, what I was talking about earlier with some of the larger coins moving up to around, the 786 or the 886 extension. The other coins are going to follow those as well. So, with Ethereum moving up, a lot of liquidity comes through Uniswap through Ethereum. So based on that, you'll see Uniswap slowly follow. You should see it continue, up above the golden pocket. I did have a target laid out around $18.07. Your 786 fib sticks out around a volume node there around 25.8, so just below $26. I do think Uniswap will go higher than the all-time high in this rally. As far as how bullish it'll get, a little more conservative case, $70 to $90, maybe just above 100. For like a base case, you'd be looking around $200 just above that, and a bullish case could take you a lot higher. I don't want to speculate too much higher than that because I believe the measured move does take you right around that $200 area for the wedge that Uniswap is in on the macro. So something to keep in mind though, shorter term. We have kind of, reached into this territory on the weekly RSI where we do have to call this overbought and potentially might see some, sort of a retrace. So do we see a significant retest of the moving averages? Do we see a full retest of the breakout of this pattern? That would constitute like a triple bottom potentially. We'll have to wait and see. I don't want to get too bearish on this right now, but I'm trying to keep my bias a little level-headed right now, considering the spot that we're at in the market and that we've seen pullbacks from this spot historically. So the next few months, I just think are going to be really, really volatile. People need to be very careful with their entries and make sure that they're taking profits if they are entering on projects, because we're in a range where if you're entering on these things, you could get yanked by 40 or 50% overnight without realizing what's going on. So I would just tell everybody to be a little bit cautious at this point, but I'm still looking for the momentum to play out to the upside. But again, if Bitcoin doesn't cooperate and we see a larger pullback, we could see much larger pullbacks in altcoins as well. So there's nothing saying that these altcoins have to make new all-time highs as Bitcoin is moving to make a new all-time high. We may see, a different type of a reverberation or a repercussion in the market as Bitcoin moves into that all-time high and then potentially retest that all-time high as it just did. Because I believe that's likely what we just saw, right? So if we look at, let me bring up a little different chart here. Should be a little cleaner. If we look at how we just made this new high, we had this closure on the previous month's candle, which was basically right at the level of the closures of the previous rally's high. So did we retest that already as support? Possibly. Did we just retest it again as support? Possibly. Because that area that we just retested, right, was around 65,000, 64.9. And if we take a look, where was the closure at the top of the last rally? It was at 65.5. So realistically, we just tested that, but was it a retest, or was it the first tap where we're potentially going to break it back down and, possibly come all the way back down to retest these moving averages or even lower? I really think it's honestly possible that we could still see 20K area fill at some point. We're getting really overextended right now. So I want people to be really careful in terms of Bitcoin itself and what your altcoins are doing going forward. Just make sure you have a plan if the market's going to go sideways. All right.
Yeah, I concur with that advice 100%. And what I would say is that if you're looking for altcoin entries, just look for anything that's top tier, in terms of its caliber, in terms of its technology, in terms of its capabilities, and look for things that have good entries right now, things that haven't moved yet, because most of the altcoin market has started to make some pretty decent gains from cycle lows. So even new coins that just started out, like Levita, is up 5x from its cycle low, and it's holding up pretty well in the dumping right now. So I think it's important to take profits right now, especially when you have 3 all-time highs in Bitcoin in a week. That screams take profit. So expect to see some downside, probably for I would say sideways to down. Probably I would say, Jason, 50K is really strong support, and 60K is probably just as strong, if not slightly less. So I think those two, if you match up those Bollinger Bands, I think you'll see that's a pretty good supply area. But I'm setting my my buy targets for Bitcoin like in the 59,500 area up to about the 62,000 area right now. That's what I'm doing. That's how I'm playing it.
Okay. And that's going to be like around the swing wick of the last weekly move. So yeah, and in terms of how this is playing out, right, if you look at like what a textbook cup and handle would be, that would be typically what you would see. It's about, if I remember correctly, a 20% retrace on a textbook cup and handle. So if we're to make a handle here, it wouldn't have to be a significant retrace in order for us to, have that actually set up here. So we'll have to see what happens. Again, looking at past history, I'm feeling very, very cautious right now because of what's happened in the past, because things are starting to heat up geopolitically, because we have, an election cycle where I've heard rumblings of, potential for a lot of unrest. So, I don't put too much stock in the, all the day-to-day, flapping of the gums, but when it comes down to it, unfortunately that stuff does influence retail. So, the chart will usually tell us that the market's moving the other way before all that stuff comes down the pipe. So, do we see some crazy stuff over the next few months? Some bank collapses, some protests going into the summer, which is usually when we see that type of stuff. Nobody wants to be out freezing their butt off protesting in the middle of winter. Their causes aren't worth that much pain and suffering. So, with that in mind, I think we'll probably leave it off there, and we'll see how the market plays out over the next 24 to 48 hours. I would just buckle up, expect volatility, look for a potential, failure swing. If we make new highs, then your guess is as good as mine. It's going to be 75, 80, 90K would be the next targets. And low side, like you were saying, potentially 59, 60K. That level was pretty strong support before, so you could put some buy orders in there and potentially get those filled. But when we look at how far away we are from the significant moving averages on the weekly, you know, the really strong support is down around 40K, 43 area, you know, down to 40K. So I would potentially keep an eye out for that if things get really, really hairy, and that's not going to happen overnight, so don't freak out, folks. Make sure that you're watching your smaller time frames, your hourly, 4-hour, daily, for clues of that potential breakdown. We'll continue to monitor this stuff here as well at Crypto Clown World. And with all that said, I am Jason Bruce. I'm going to get honking on out of here. Thanks as always to Mr. Christopher Lundy. Thanks, Ryan, for listening in and chiming in. Anybody is always welcome to do that. You can always jump over to the Telegram from the Discord and listen in and take part in our conversation. So thanks to everyone if you made it this far. If you haven't on the way out, please honk the like button and get subscribed to our channel. Hit the bell for notifications. And we will see you on next week's edition of the Crypto Clown World podcast. Take care, everybody. Much love. God bless.